program is part of the Scene Project's podcast network. The Scene Project features interviews with independent musicians, comedians, and artists from across the Midwest. Become part of our community and support local art wherever you are. Well, welcome into a very exciting episode of The Scene. I am your host, Bubba Startz, and with me today is my friend Naila Qazi. She's from the Center for Change and Leadership in Toronto, Canada. Welcome to the show, Naila.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on your show.
It's my absolute pleasure. We're both members of another network called the C-Suite Network. That's where we met. But before we get into all the things that we're both up to now, I'd love to hear and let you share a little bit of, who you are and where you came from with our listeners.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so if we really go back, and I wouldn't give some milestone dates because I don't want to reflect my age, as my kids think, oh my God, you're too old, because anything beyond 2000 they see, they think it's old because they're born after 2000. So it's just like, anyway, that was just a joke in our family, and I thought we will kind of start with on a lighter note. So I migrated from Pakistan as a young person to Australia, and then educated myself there, got married, had 2 kids. I did master's in education. I did MBA from Sydney University. And then in 2011, I think we migrated to Canada because all our family is in North America, either in the States or Canada. And we wanted our kids to have their cousins and everything. But at the same time, I wanted to explore. I always knew the other world, like this world, the United States and Canada, and really wanted to explore opportunities and possibilities. I think that's very much ingrained in my nature. That really helped me to break all those barriers from a little rural village, underprivileged kind of area. And then like my early migration to Australia as a young person, and then really changing continents, working in several continents. So I think that's sort of given that my nature is like breaking barriers which come in the way and really exploring where the possibilities are. And that really drove me to get into my consulting business. But before I did that, I think I had very fortunate corporate career for almost around 15 years, working with larger, complex organizations, large projects, working with executives and CEOs. So that was just a true privilege. I had a choice to pick who I want to work with. And so now I run my own consulting firm. We do the same work. We bring change within organizations. We try to transform leaders. And the whole purpose is to really improve performance, lead it to the peak performance, both at the employee level and at the organizational level.
Well, and it seems like what you're focused on is not looking at the organization as a thing itself, but it is made up of these humans, right? And it seems like the work that you do is much more involved with, I don't want to say fixing, but in improving the human, and in that way you improve the organization. Is that kind of a fair assessment of your consulting?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, what is an organization, right? So regardless, private, public, not-for-profit, entrepreneurial journey, someone's organization, someone's dream, and it comes to no matter what you have as an entity, which we call organization, it's made up of people, right? And if people are motivated, they are highly, I call them happy, and they are able to see in the same way where leaders want to see. For example, they want to go the strategy or all those like very cliched words we could use, but they should see the vision, they should see the why, they should visualize what we're doing and why we're doing it and how it's going to impact them as person, as human, as professionals, and overall as community, and then everyone become part of that entity, which is organization. So you are absolutely right that the end, my goal is always to work with people, and we work across the levels, like middle kingdom, which I call the middle management, up to the shop level or the floor level. I think everyone needs to be engaged, and they should have their voice, they should have their opinion. It should be highly inclusive process, and that really ends up improving the organization. Like bottom up is kind of around 99% of the time, but sometimes culture change. Say, for example, it's the leadership behaviors, which is top down. So we look at both approaches, but most of the time, you're right, it's people who need to be, I call them ignited, or that fire should come from that core, and then it really impacts the organization.
Now, when you're consulting these places, are you working on a level of like you have 200 of the employees in a room and you're delivering a message, or is more of what you do working with the leaders, like you said, the mid-level management people, and kind of training them on how to be more effective leaders to change their culture?
Yeah, so this is an excellent question, and we work across all those levels, right? So when you work at the senior management level, it's very visionary kind of meetings, and it's a smaller group you work with, and you see that what kind of directions they want to go, so they have clarity and we have clarity as consultants, because we're not consultants, we're partners, and we really become part of the organization. And then you bring it down to the little bit larger group, which is extended leadership. In that case, yes, depending upon the size of the organization, we could be dealing with like 200 people in a town hall kind of format and delivering the messages. And then it comes to exactly the floor level, like where it's a huge town hall. I've done several in my change messaging. You also do focus groups. You go team by team as well. Everything really contextualized. Everything depends on the culture of the organization, what they really want it happen. Sometimes people have change fatigue. Sometimes they have failed projects. They don't want to listen that word change again. So then we approach it in a very different way, which is acceptable to people, and then change them into an advocate or whatever this, if it's not a change, whatever it is. So we involve them into that. So to answer this question, we work across all the levels, from shorter messaging to larger group messaging to town halls. In one of the organization I work, they had everybody in the gym. Like there was a big gym in their vicinity, and there were like hundreds of people, and we have leaders come in honestly accepting their, they were vulnerable, they accepting their, I wouldn't say mistakes, I would say things they did not do the way it should be done or accepted by people. There was some history, and they were open, they were honest, and they were taking questions like unfiltered, and they were answering them unfiltered. And that was very powerful in terms of the organization engagement scores they did afterwards went really high. So to sum up this question, it really depends what kind of messaging, at what time, who is the messenger of that message, and what do we want the impact, like what kind of results we want from that messaging. But most of the time it's employee driven, and we set up those groups and we put forward especially the frontline employees to really run those sorts of things, whereas we have the structure, the guidance, the roadmap, the messaging at the back end.
And as someone who worked in some very large factories here as a welder and has been at that bottom level, I've kind of seen how sometimes people who raise to mid-management, right, aren't necessarily there because they are a leader. It's because they knew their job very well, and maybe they had just been there long enough and it was their turn. But then the company themselves never provide any kind of leadership training to get people that are underneath of them to to believe in them, right? They have to believe the message that's being delivered to them every day, right? So do you think, is that kind of what you do then, is to help people that maybe don't have the leadership skills necessarily to be able to deliver that message, but to find that message by going into the smaller groups and talking to the people and then going up the chain of command and going, hey, this is what your people are saying. This is how you can effectively deliver the message that needs to be delivered.
Yeah. Leadership is a trainable skill. It's a learnable skill. Lots of research has now proved that myth is like demystified, that you're born as a leader. So it's a trainable skill, and our effort is always to give the power to empower people, as you said, the welders, the people who change tires in a train system, or people who really are on the floor level, and the women who kind of sew the train seats, the red cover, which when we sit in the trains, those kind of things. So we have dealt with them, and they are full of wisdom, and they are leaders without the titles already there. But now we have to really give them that confidence. We have to give them tools. We also have to give them the strategy that how to really enhance further their skills if they have. And if they don't have the confidence, how to build that confidence in. Unless we have leader in every chair, organizations or no organization in this world could be better at making real decisions in real time, because you're right. The top leadership has no idea what happens on the shop front. It helps making decisions. They have real-time data, not in numbers and dashboards and reports which different teams produce, but more like they listen from people, like what is happening right on the fronts, right? So they have the real-time data. They know that where the resources should be assigned to. They know where the mistakes happen, and then the solutions are already there. People already have solutions at that level, but they should be given the confidence, training. What we provide, we give them a roadmap, we give them tools, we give them strategies, and that gives them confidence to really say that this is the solution. That's the problem which we have identified, and that's how we think 3 or 4 steps are needed to solve it. And we have done it several times, really give confidence and empowerment to that level, and then really see the change happening.
Well, and it's going to sound silly when I say it, but you're teaching an organization how to communicate with itself.
And that's always the case, right? As we are becoming more and more tech savvy, or technology is improving, at the same time silos are increasing, even in organization up to 500 people to like 50,000 or 100,000 global, geographical, jurisdictional. Imagine, right? Now we're doing business all over the world. Even like, I don't know, like where state you are, and I'm here in Toronto, Canada. We're connecting with each other. So these are the best parts. But the other side is silos. We're all working in silos. So communications either get missed or it's overload of communication. And what I've observed being a change and leadership consultant, that sometime or most of the time the messages are kind of broken phone line. Like by the time they reach up to where it reaches, the message either changes or it's not the intent as it was initial at the top level, right? So, or a C-suite level, or executive level. So communication happens, but it happens in a way which is not intended, does not leave good results, and that is the reason that technologically, we're launching more and more tools in the organization. But if you look at anxiety, you look at mental health issues, you look at happiness of people, the numbers are very alarming, especially mental health, anxiety. I've seen people crying. I've seen, you don't see that often, like even men are in tears. And I'm not saying it as that men should not cry, but generally it's like women are more open and like they just expose, like they cry and they talk about their issues, And men generally are, in our culture, unfortunately trained that, no, you have to be the big guy. But I've seen that vulnerability there as well, only because people are upset. People get very scared of any change. Now, take, for example, this AI launch, which everyone is now rushing without looking at the consequences of people. I just did a little bit of newsletter on my LinkedIn that AI launch is the best launch which is happening because lots of repetitive and administrative time wasting uncreative tasks will be given to the machine. But at the same time, how much people are worrying about their jobs, they're worrying about their future, they're worrying about what will happen, and they're not fully trained how to use it. This is causing mental health issues in the organizations, and no one is looking at that. So, so if we communicate better, if we communicate very early on, if we engage people either through committees, either through focus groups, we make buddies, we make champions of the change, and these are kind of all jargon words which we use in our change, but it all works. So the whole purpose is that the message is conveyed as it's meant to be. It's conveyed regularly. There is no vacuum, and by the trusted partners. Another thing which I want to point out, majority of below management does not believe and trust their management and executives. And then we have to kind of bridge that gap. Why is that? Because the intentions on both sides are great, but it's that vacuum of communication or that broken phone line, which I say the communication, that really builds that lack of trust. And then we generally work around it. We make sure that that line is like smooth line. The message is cascaded properly by the proper messengers. Where the trust is built, it should be built. And where we need to reduce anxiety, I'm very focused on making sure that people are less anxious through any change, through any transformation. I'm very, very aware of mental health issues and how people have families and communities, and they want to be part of all that outside of their job. And if one part is affected, which is their job, they're not effective on any other roles they play outside of the job.
Do you feel that your life experience, a migrant, self-taught in Pakistan, how to read, moving to different cultures, speaking different languages, do you feel that experience has made you an effective communicator and has allowed you to kind of take on these challenges of solving these problems for other people and other companies?
Yeah, absolutely. Like anyone who travels a lot, has worked in several continents, would really say that that's the best part of their development, because you lived in several cultures, you worked in several cultures. I just recently have been in Europe and travel and work in several different European countries, and even like 2 hours of train travel, and you're in a different country with different culture, with different work ethics, and it really helps a lot. So there is the other side as well. Like, as I'm talking to you, I have an accent, and I look like a certain way. I am originally like Pakistani, raised and born early years. So that's the other side as well. Sometimes that's not taken very well. It's not that I never had my share of challenges, or people thought that they didn't understand because, say, for example, my accent wasn't clear at certain things, or say, for example, it just appeared as if I'm not understanding just because the moment I spoke, they realized that I speak in a different way. So both, but that makes me more aware of the needs of how people hear a certain message, not just its intent, but also the vernacular, right? So the sound of the accent and all those things. And they're not doing it because people want to attack you, or I don't know what the right word is. It's just because we are musical, right? We hear different accents. For me, it's very easy because I hear different accents and I'm okay with that. Even within states, you move around to different states that you hear different accents, even by Americans, right? So I'm okay with that. But if people are not accustomed or they're not used to, they have not traveled outside of their certain region and they're working within the same job for past few years or 20 years, or maybe that's their only job, or the only transformation that happened is now this little woman is doing it who has different accent. So they're not doing it to cause me discomfort. It's just they're not aware, and our job is to really bring that awareness and then bring that familiarity. And I think modern technology and being connected with the world, it's doing great favor in that respect. People see different cultures, different aspects, and then they see that people are intelligent everywhere. It's not just the color of your skin. It's not the background you have come from. It's not your ethnicity or your education or your beliefs in any way. It's just who you are, and you can bring a lot to offer, right? I am on the table, and I own my seat, and I bring a lot. So regardless of the skin of my color or the accent I speak in, but so it brings in humility, my understanding of traveling and living and understanding different cultures. It also brings in breadth and richness to my own experience. And the big thing is I jump on it. It just brings that kind of wildness to some of the work which I do, that, yes, do it wherever it is, like whatever part of the world it is, because I'm not afraid to go to anywhere, right? Because I can just go with my tools, go with my brain, and build an amazing roadmap for someone who they never have met from the other side of the world. So it gives you that confidence and that excitement and that non-traditional confinement. Like, I think I'm very out of the box person, and it has a lot to do with different cultural experiences.
I, for one, think your accent is lovely. And what it does for me is that it kind of forces me to listen harder, right? It forces me to make sure that I'm really in tune with listening to you and not being distracted by anything else around me. And I lived in Mexico for a year and didn't speak Spanish that well at all. So I had people that were slowing down for me and learning how to effectively communicate my thoughts and my feelings. Luckily for me, I'm a musician, so I found that through music, you have a universal language, but language barriers can be a scary thing. And even if you're speaking the same language, it can sound totally different. I just had a phone call earlier today, Naila, with a man who lives in Omaha now. He works for my bank. He lives in Omaha, but he was from Long Island, New York. So as soon as he answers the phone, all right, yeah, I'm Mike and I'm from New York. And I was just like, this is just wild. Yeah. I don't get to hear it very often, but the same thing, it forces me to listen a little bit harder. And I think that, you know what? You are out of the box. You're a wild lady. Your history is completely insane. I mean, learning to read and teaching yourself to read English, and I know that you're Muslim, and I believe you told me that you learned how to read from a very different book than most people would assume you'd learn to read English. It was from the Bible, was it not?
Yeah, I think it was one of. In my little rural area, because there were no resources, someone immigrated from somewhere, and he gave me a box of books. And I always knew that there is some other world. Like, it's not just that rural kind of farmhouse. I used to listen to BBC News. I put my radio on, and the moment this ding, the BBC kind of very traditional music would start, I would say, this language, this woman is saying something. And then I would go, I had a huge dictionary. I would look at the words. And then I was very fortunate, like this person handed over this bag of books. He said he migrated, but there's no room in his house. And the first book I opened was Bible. I said, wow, a book in English, right? So I ate it up, I read it like page by page. you know how literally when you say, this is my Bible, so that was my Bible. And I just went through like chapter by chapter, word by word. So it was not the religious content which inspired me. It was more the story, the way those stories are. They're very similar to our religious book, to Quran. Like
they're all the same stories, Naila.
Same stories. Yeah. The main lesson I took out of that is, okay, let's not be kind of distracted by the stories, and they are the same. But I wanted to read it like the English, and I would have my kind of pen and paper and take the words and I translate. And the next set of books which I opened were all Shakespearean tragedies, right?
Oh, my goodness.
Novels. Macbeth was the first one, and then I was just
what an introduction to the English language, Naila. My goodness. We could just talk about literature for hours.
And then Keats and Wordsworth, and it was just like that's how I started kind of my introduction to English, and I fell in love with the language, not just the language, but what it offered, like such a variety from stories in Bible to Macbeth kind of plays, and like I would kind of recite, like at that age I had the full kind of soliloquy recited, and I could just say it. And I think later in my life, when I migrated, my parents put me into boarding school. There was a play which we did, Macbeth, and they chose me only because half of it I remembered by heart. So I was one of the main characters because I knew everything, and I was competing with girls who came from highly educated family, affluent family, raised and born in like English kind of class rooms and all. So it was hard, but it was freedom. Like I know, like I had nothing to which I could tell, but I would have those little things in my little wooden box, which I think I went to the local wood crafting guy and I said, Uncle, could you make it for me, this little one? Then I would go to the guy who would do the locksmith guy. I got a little lock done because he would do it with hands. And then to the tailor, because it was a little town and everyone knew everybody. But it was freedom, right? So all the boys in my, I wouldn't say street, like in that area, I would outrun them. I was kind of smart, petite, little, like, as I said, out of the box, and I would just run them. I was their boss. It was a pack. And we come home like very late night, and everyone will get like, just, okay, go home and all. And my dad was the village kind of lead, and I was the one who, okay, where did you take them this time? And then it was, I think that freedom really was instilled in me when I was being raised with nothing, like no materialistic possessions. But I enjoyed the free life, and I'm very thankful to that, which God gave me, the freedom of thinking, the freedom of like reading Bible in my room, and the freedom of reading all those books, and have the opportunity to have a hand on to BBC World Service, kind of listen to that. And then I started in grade 8, used to write letters to Oxford and Harvard. And each time those big prospectus would come, I don't know how old were you then, they would mail you the booklets. And I would think, oh, they have accepted me, they're taking me. And then that uncle who I said immigrated from somewhere, educated, I think somewhere in Oxford, he would say, no, these are just the books. They would just show you. And then I would see people like these great universities, green grass and like fresh flowers. And I would say, yeah, one day that is me. So I visualized myself. Even I had no material grounds to have those dreams, but they were my dreams, I think. And in my sense, wherever I am right now, I think I have broken many glass ceilings and barriers to be here. I was in Australia, I had amazing jobs. We migrated here, like amazing experience, both like in the States and Canada. And so people think that, it sounds like smooth sailing and it was nothing. But I don't want to talk more about what could go wrong or what was bad. It's more about what you make out of it, right? So that like a little locksmith, I would fetch water for him. That was the deal. And he will make lock for me because he needed water for things, whatever he worked. I said, okay, uncle, I accept that deal. And the person who would bind my books, my deal was, okay, I have these books. We need to bind them. They're older books from the classmate who did a year before me, and I don't want to sound poor in my class, so you have to bind them new. But the whole night I would sit with that uncle and bind book for others, so he can do it free for me. So I started doing that, those kind of trade, what they call it, bargaining, negotiations. At very early age, the bartered kind of, I would give my labor. I was an active child, and I would just do a lot of work for them. And my parents had kids. They have issues about, like, daily chores. My mother was very busy. They had no idea how do I kind of make myself sufficient. But I just keep on moving. Like, I never lost confidence. I never lost my dreams. And I knew that there is that world, like somewhere it exists. It's huge. And I still believe in that. Like, it's huge, it's big. And that's what I bring into my consulting, that we can all be leaders with peak performance if every single one of the person in the organization gets that same, like, ignited in the same way, and they can get attached to the dream, like not just the fake hollow words.
Naila, you have a completely unique and inspiring story. I just love it so much. We could talk for hours and hours and hours, and I would never get tired of talking to you. But for the purpose of this podcast, I think we've covered about as much as a regular person can handle. Why don't you go ahead and tell everyone your website and how they can find you? And I will be talking again shortly, I'm sure.
Absolutely. I'm super active on LinkedIn. People could search me on LinkedIn, Naila Qazi, Qazi. And along with my name is ProSci certified. So if you see many Nailas, no one has the ProSci and ICF, that is International Coach Federation certification. I have them both up on the top to distinguish me. I'm very active there. Subscribe to my newsletter. I share a lot through that. My website is called cclcanada.com. And I can share it through the podcast that you would share with us. I would kind of repost it on my LinkedIn and then share all the details.
Awesome. Well, we will definitely do that. Naila, I appreciate you being on the show with me today.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure talking to you. And anyway, knowing you, like, I enjoy, like, when we are in those breakout rooms, and I enjoy the best when there is no one else. By mistake, they just have two of us in the room, and that's the best way to know each other.
It was such a happy incident, and now it's led us here. And where it leads from here, I guess no one knows.
Absolutely. Happy New Year, and all the best for 2025.
You bet. Thanks for being part of the scene.
Thanks. Bye-bye.